I never imagined discovering the heart-stopping fortunes of Brazil's wealthiest in 2024. The day began with a thin veil of fog hanging over the golden beaches of Rio, whispering secrets that danced with the waves. I stood on the balcony of my tiny apartment, the ocean's salty breeze mixing with my rising anxiety. My heart raced as I clutched the newspaper in trembling hands. There it was, a headline that made my skin crawl. Billionaires disappearing without a trace. It was everywhere. Rumors of hidden treasures. Shadowy figures trading wealth for power. It all felt like something out of a movie. Small voices echoed in my mind, doubts, fears. I could already hear the whispers of my neighbors, their cautious looks piercing through the morning air. It's dangerous to dig too deep, they warned, voices low. But who could resist? The thought of unearthing secrets that could change everything was intoxicating. I thought of my childhood friend, Mia, with her fiery spirit and relentless curiosity. She'd be right beside me in this mad chase, urging me to uncover the truth. But life had a way of twisting our fates. We lost touch after her family moved away, chasing fortune and dreams that slipped through my fingers like sand. I longed for her laughter, the way it used to light up even the darkest corners of my life. Now I stood alone, facing an invisible enemy. I collected small details from the swirling chaos: the mysterious millionaire last seen at a bustling market, the whispers of a hidden fortune buried in the Amazon's depths. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. It felt like every ounce of hope depended on the answers I sought. I had to know. The urge to pursue was overwhelming. But shadows loomed. Power struggles, betrayal, and danger lurked around every corner. As I dove deeper into the abyss, unraveling ties to a treacherous underground world, I realized I wasn't just seeking wealth, but fighting for my place in this complex puzzle. The stakes were higher than I imagined. I could feel it in my bones. Suddenly, a notification pinged on my phone. An urgent message. Meet me at the old warehouse. I have something you need to see. My breath hitched. Could be a trap. Or it could be the breakthrough I was desperately waiting for. My heart pounded in anticipation and dread. What awaited me there? Was I stepping into my destiny or walking straight into danger? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The old warehouse stood at the end of a dilapidated street, its weathered structure looming like some spectral guardian over memories long forgotten. Shadows clung to its corners, and every creak of the wooden floor bore the weight of history. Generations of hopes and dreams embedded in the dusty beams. As I approached, the knot in my stomach tightened further. Doubt washed over me, mixed with a strange thrill. I was teetering on the edge of something profound, yet dangerously uncertain. I stepped inside, the scent of rust and dampness wrapping around me like an unwanted embrace. The dim light filtering through the cracks in the walls illuminated scattered debris, remnants of what once was a life bursting with innovation, now faded into illegibility. My heart raced as I surveyed the room, searching for the source of the message and hoping against hope that it wasn't a trap. Then I saw him. A figure partially obscured by shadows, leaning against a table strewn with papers. The weary outline of a man with tired eyes met my gaze. "You came," he said, his voice low and gravelly, reverberating in the stillness. "I wasn't sure you would." "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to mask the tremor in my voice with bravado. "And what do you know about the disappearances?" He stepped forward, revealing a familiar face. It was Felipe, a name from my pasta childhood neighbor, who always had a knack for uncovering stories that others would prefer remained hidden. "I've been searching for answers, too," he admitted, his expression a mixture of desperation and determination. "They're connected. The billionaires. the hidden treasures and my breath caught in my throat like a stone lodged in water. Mia? I repeated, shock rippling through me. You've seen her? He nodded solemnly, pulling a tattered photograph from his pocket. The last time I spoke to her, she was in way over her head. Something happened to her family. They ventured too far into the underground world, and it cost them everything. Instantly, memories of Mia flooded back, the laughter, the dreams, our aspirations. I felt an ache blossom in my chest. She thought she could find something that would change their lives. I whispered, but they disappeared. Felipe's gaze hardened. That's the problem. Someone is reorganizing the power in this city. The more you dig, the more you attract attention. We need to tread carefully. My instincts battled. Part of me wanted to retreat, to preserve whatever shred of safety remained in my life. Yet the other part, me heart, tangled in the unbreakable bonds of friendship and hope, urged me to press on. We can't give up on her. Felipe, I said, my voice gaining strength. I can't lose her again. As we discussed potential leads, new connections, the atmosphere around us shifted subtly. In that rundown warehouse, surrounded by debris, I felt a flicker of determination, not just to uncover the truth behind the vanished billionaires, but a sincere hope for Mia, for the possibility of reuniting with the one person who understood my journey. Yet just as I began to feel empowered, the sound of footsteps echoed behind us, harsh and deliberate. Felipe and I exchanged terrified glances. We're not alone, he hissed, his eyes wide with alarm. Before we could react, a light flashed in our direct Iona, harsh, intrusive beam that revealed a trio of shadowy figures at the entrance, their faces obscured but their intent unmistakably threatening. What do you think you're doing here? One of them snarled, advancing toward us with a menacing air. Panic surged through me as realization hit. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. I was no longer just uncovering secrets. I was about to become a target in a dangerous game. The fight or flight instinct ignited within me, every part of my being screaming to escape. But just as the air thickened with tension, a figure emerged from behind the shadows, an unexpected savior, a symbol of hope. It was a woman I had not seen in years, a once familiar face that now felt like a beacon in a drowning sea. Stop, she shouted, her voice defiant and commanding, freezing the men in place. Mia? I breathed, disbelief mingling with elation. But before I could process the magnitude of her presence, uncertainty clawed at my mind. What had she become? Who had she allied herself with? The reunion I longed for suddenly felt like a precarious thread, dangling above a dizzying abyss. I stood there, caught between the shadows of the past and the terrifying unknown of the future. In that moment of frozen clarity, I understood that I wasn't just chasing wealth or power anymore. I was entangled in a web of secrets, friendships, and the risks that came with unearthing the truth. But as the unyielding faces before us hardened, one question loomed larger than all the rest. Would this reunion lead us to safety or deeper into danger? The air hung taut with confusion and anxiety, like the moment before a storm breaks. Mia stood there, illuminated by the harsh light cutting through the warehouse darkness, every inch of her radiating authority and the remnants of the girl I once knew. My heart raced, caught in a whirlwind of emotions that threatened to drown me. Mia, I managed to whisper, but the sound got lost amid the low murmurs of the men still cautiously advancing. The familiarity of her name felt foreign on my lips. I had imagined seeing her again countless times, yet nothing could have prepared me for this surreal reunion. The backdrop of threats and uncertainty transformed what should have been a moment of joy into an unsettling tension. Get out of the way, Mia, one of the men barked, his voice a jagged edge slicing through the silence. You don't know what you're dealing with. Her stance wavered, a flicker of doubt momentarily crossing her face before she solidified her resolve. And you don't know the lengths I'm willing to go to protect my friends. She shot back, fierce in her defiance. Felipe shuffled closer to me, his presence a silent source of reassurance, as we silently exchanged fleeting glances. The atmosphere crackled with unspoken fears. The trio loomed closer, their predatory gazes surveying us, but Mia remained steadfast. It was then that I saw it fully, the hardened lines of her face, the weight of burdens she carried, and the fierce fire of someone who had fought tooth and nail to reach this moment. "What have you gotten yourself into?" I asked, my heart heavy with concern. "We've been worried sick about you." Without tearing her gaze from the men, she spoke rapidly. "Things got complicated, but we can't talk here. They're watching." I said, "Step aside." The leader roared, and before I could register the danger, he lunged forward. My instincts kicked in, the fight or flight response surged anew, but I found myself gripped by a profound fear for Mia. But just then, time froze. As the men moved in, an unexpected burst of light exploded in the warehouse, enveloping us all in blinding chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the sound reverberated with an urgency that jolted me into action. "Follow me," Mia shouted, and in an instant, she turned and sprinted deeper into the warehouse, dragging Felipe and me along in her wake. The darkness welcomed us like an accomplice, the men still scrambling and shouting behind us, their exclamations muffled by the adrenaline pulsing through my veins. We darted through a maze of rusty machinery and dimly lit corridors, the air thick with dust and foreboding memories. My heart thudded violently beneath my ribcage as I pushed myself to keep pace with Mia, whose determination injected a fragile spark of hope into my chest. "Where are we going?" I gasped, breathless as we skidded around a corner, a sliver of light beckoning from a distant doorway. "To safety," she called over her shoulder, pausing just long enough to meet my gaze. The raw emotion in her eyes struck mix of fear and relief reflected the weight of our shared past, a tapestry woven with dreams and disappointments. We burst through the door, spilling out into a narrow alley veiled in the embrace of night. An old, battered car awaited us, its engine already humming with life. "Get in," Mia ordered, and the urgency in her voice stirred within me a fierce sense of loyalty I thought lost. We crowded into the cramped back seat, the smell of old leather mingling with the stench of the alley. The car jolted forward, the tires screeching against the asphalt as we sped away from the encroaching danger. I looked back through the dusty rear window, the warehouse disappearing behind us, but the gnawing realization that we had not escaped the threat formed a heavy resignation in my heart. It wasn't just the men that haunted me now. It was the uncertainty of what had twisted MIA's world into this chaotic spiral. "What happened to you?" I demanded, my voice laced with urgency. "Tell me everything, Mia. We have to figure this out together." Mia remained silent, her gaze fixed on the road. Ahead, a storm brewing in her eyes. The weight of my question hung in the air between us, begging for resolution yet cloaked in shadows. As we drove through dimly lit streets, flickering neon signs reflected off the windows, each flicker a ghost of past emotions. And just when I thought I might peel back the layers of her silence, she turned to me, her expression transformed into one of solemn dread. "There are things in motion that you can't imagine, things that impact everything. The deeper we dig, the less safe we become." Just as she pronounced those heavy words, the car came to a shuddering halt. The atmosphere shifted around us, an overwhelming sense of impending dread culminating in the silence that filled the space. "What now?" Felipe asked, eyes wide, scanning the dimly lit surroundings, recognizing the same fear brewing within us. MIA's expression morphed as she looked through the window, her breath hitching in her throat. "We need to leave. Right now." They've found us. Before I could ask another question, the unmistakable crunch of footsteps echoed outside, and I knew then we were far from safety. My heart raced anew as dread washed over me, and panic gripped my chest, tightening like a vice. The haunting truth settled upon us. This was only the beginning of a relentless pursuit, and uncovering the truth behind MIA's disappearance would lead us down even darker paths. And as I peered through the car window, I could only pray that our bond was enough to navigate the labyrinth of shadows that awaited us. The door was flung open, bold figures silhouetted against the streetlight. The night stretched into an abyss, and I braced myself for what lay ahead, knowing in that instant that trust would be the only guide through the dark. The weight of uncertainty pressed against my chest as the figures outside the car loomed closer, their silhouettes imposing and dark against the streetlight's pallid glow. Fear tugged at my insides, threatening to claw its way up my throat. MIA's grip on the steering wheel tightened, knuckles going white as she leaned towards me, her breath quickening. "Stay calm," she whispered fiercely. "We can't let them see we're panicked. Just follow my lead." The men approached, their voices entwined with coarse laughter, sending shivers through me. I strained to hear their words, desperately hoping to glean information that might give us an advantage, some key to their purpose here. "You think they'd run far?" One of them sneered, his arrogance hanging in the air like an unwelcome fog. "We should check all the exits." MIA's eyes darted to Felipe and back to me, her expression conveying a silent plea for unity. We exchanged a glance filled with unshakable resolve. The bond we had forged in hardship now ignited a flicker of courage within me. I nodded, determined to fight whatever came next. Before we could make any decision, the thudding of footsteps jolted us back to reality as they circled the car. Mia thrust the gear into reverse, her foot pressing down hard on the gas pedal. The tires screeched, and the car lurched back just as a shadowy figure lunged for the door handle. "Hold on," she shouted, and we were catapulted into the night, the world outside becoming a blur of streetlights and fleeting life. The thrill of the escape coursed through my veins, mixing with the terror that clung to us like an unwelcome specter. Yet, despite the chaos, a strange surge of hope blossomed. Mia's determination was infectious, igniting something fierce within me that had long been suppressed. "Where to now?" I asked breathlessly, scanning the streets for a hint of sanctuary. "Anywhere but here," she replied tightly, swerving around a corner into an isolated street that looked more like a ghost town than a pathway to safety. It was then I spotted something that sent a jolt of recognition through me. A flicker of light from a small diner illuminated the otherwise derelict surroundings. My heart quickened. "Mia, that diner. Maybe we can hide out there?" She hesitated, the weight of her conflict evident in her gaze. But the men were regrouping, their shouts now sharper, interspersed with curses and threats. "Okay," she finally agreed. "Let's go." The diner's neon sign buzzed softly as we skidded to a halt outside, my stomach twisting with uncertainty. We climbed out, the night air cold against our skin. Ghostly patrons sat inside, huddled over mugs of hot coffee, oblivious to the turmoil mounting just beyond their door. Mia led us inside, her presence radiating a fierce, protective energy. I could see her weighing the risks of being exposed in such a public setting. But we were running out of options, and the anxiety surrounding us turned the air dense and suffocating. "2 coffees and a slice of pie," Mia instructed the waitress briskly before guiding us to a secluded booth in the corner. We slid in, trying to make ourselves as inconspicuous as possible while setting our eyes on the entryway. "Mia," I pressed, needing her to open up. "You can't just leave me in the dark. What happened between when you left and now? You're acting like we're in a spy movie." MIA's gaze flickered, the lines of worry etched on her brow deepening. "If I tell you, you'll be in danger, too. I won't risk your safety. Risks are what we're facing right now. You need to trust me," I implored, willing her to understand. Her breath caught as she glanced at Felipe, who nodded slowly, allowing a flicker of empathy to soften the tension between us. "Okay," she finally exhaled. "But you have to promise me that once I begin, you won't interrupt me. I can't afford to repeat myself." Time stretched as Mia continued, her voice low and filled with a turmoil that echoed our shared history. "After I left, I found something huge hidden in the system we were investigating. That's what got me pursued. The power players of Brazil's wealthiest there. Dirty secrets. They'd do anything to keep it hidden." That I leaned in, heart racing as the implications of her words began to coalesce in my mind. "What did you uncover?" "Enough to shatter lives," she said, her expression earnest. "I didn't just stumble into something risky. I uncovered a network, transactions that led to devastation. My team was compromised. We thought we could expose them, but they came for us first." A flicker of anxiety crossed my face. "And now, they're after you again." Mia nodded gravely, the weight of her truth heavy between us. "They'll stop at nothing to silence me. We need to figure out how to protect ourselves before it goes too far." Just as she finished speaking, the glass door rattled open behind us. I turned, anxiety knotting in my stomach once more at the sight of the men. They piled into the diner, scanning the room with cold, calculating eyes that fell upon us. My heart plummeted. Mia, they'll find us, I hissed, panic rising within me like the tide. She grabbed my hand sharply, her voice strained but fierce. Stay calm. We're not out of this yet. We're in this together. As they moved closer, the world around me darkened, the looming confrontation stretching out before us like an impending storm. Mia leaned closer, her eyes locked on mine, igniting a fire from within. Whatever happens, don't let go of my hand. The door swung shut behind them, sealing our fate as we braced ourselves for the heart-stopping confrontation looming just within the diner's fragile safety. In that moment, the reality sunk in. We had no choice but to confront what lay ahead, and the shadows of uncertainty promised no easy resolution. Unraveled secrets and hidden dangers stood ready to collide, and the trust between us would be the only weapon we had as fear edged closer. The diner's atmosphere shifted as the men approached, their presence sucking the warmth from the air as effectively as the flickering neon lights cast ominous shadows on the walls. I clutched Mia's hand tightly, feeling the tension radiating between us, the thrum of adrenaline pulsing like a drumbeat in my ears. Stay still, she whispered, her voice low and steady despite the turmoil swirling around us. Act natural. I took a deep breath, reminding myself the diner was still filled with unsuspecting patrons. If we could just keep our heads down and avoid drawing attention, maybe we could escape unnoticed. But the piercing gaze of one of the Mina hulking figure with a scar running down his cheek bore into me like a shard of ice. He turned his attention to a couple sitting nearby, leaning over them with an unsettling yet calculated enthusiasm, mere inches from their table. You seen a couple of kids come through here? Dark hair. Nervous? Could you help us out? I could hardly breathe as I watched the couple exchange worried glances, their apprehension palpable. Desperation thrummed through me, torn between the urge to shout a warning and the instinct to maintain our facade. The waitress returned with our coffee and pie, oblivious to the looming threat as she placed the steaming mugs down before us. Mia masked her fear with a polite smile, but I could see the tension coiling like a spring within her. Can you just... I started, but she squeezed my hand tighter, silencing me. The scarred man moved closer, his voice dropping to a low, gravelly timbre that seemed to ripple through the air. Come on, help us out. We don't want any trouble. Just a couple of kids, you understand? The couple nodded blindly, stammering apologies as they both instinctively shrank a little further into their seats. My heart raced. Why did they have to know what we looked like? Did we stand a chance of slipping under the radar now? Suddenly, one of the thugs turned his gaze to our booth, dark eyes narrowing. My stomach dropped. Hey, he called out, striding toward us with predatory confidence. You seen anyone come in here? Two kids running scared. Time slowed to a crawl. I could see a minute tremor in Mia's jaw, her expression firming with resolve despite the fear lacing her features. I locked my gaze with hers, the urgency of the moment spinning wild dreams and fears through my mind, competing for clarity. To my shock, a small voice broke into the scene. A young girl, perhaps no older than 6, stood at the edge of our booth, clutching a teddy bear as some semblance of innocence. I saw them, she piped up, looking towards the men with wide, trusting eyes. They went out the back door. Everything felt surreal, as though I was watching the events unfold in a movie. The cold breath of fear against my nape turned into something more profound, an overwhelming feeling of helplessness twisted with hope. Maya, no! Mia cried, about to leap out of the booth and grab the girl, but I held her back, sensing the tumultuous danger spiraling out of control. The thugs turned their full attention to the child, their faces shifting from anger to incredulity. Is that so? The scarred man growled, a smile creeping across his lips that sent a chill racing down my spine. I saw them. They were scared, the girl insisted, her bright eyes wide, seemingly unaware of the danger she was aggravating. Maya, get back here. A voice called from the counter, a woman rushing towards the child, panic evident on her face. The sudden commotion distracted the men momentarily, but I could see their focus sharpening again, and the moment of chaos felt like holding a breath, running a marathon without knowing the finish line. I glanced toward the diner's back exit, the darkened shadows offering a slim chance for escape. Mia, we need to go, I urged, my pulse quickening further. Now. But then I saw the way the scarred man shifted, taking a step forward as though reading the signal to lunge in our direction. Mia's gaze darted to mine, urgency igniting in her eyes. We can't leave that girl behind, she exclaimed, and my heart sank, knowing she would never abandon an innocent. Before I could grab her wrist and pull her towards safety, she was out of the booth, moving with purpose. It all felt surreal, as if she were operating in a world apart, where bravery superseded sound judgment. Stop, she shouted, facing the men with a defiance that struck a chord of admiration but also fear within me. Just then, the waitress interjected, her voice trembling yet strong. She's just a child. Leave her alone. But the men laughed, two of them advancing like wolves caught on a scent. My body reacted before I could even think, launching me out of the booth, a bolt of energy coursing through me as I raced forward. Mia, get back, I shouted, but she just shouted one word. Run? I froze, searching her eyes as she faced the men. Fear blended with determination, carving a path of courage between us. And in that enchanting yet horrifying moment, I glimpsed a realization this was bigger than just us. It was woven into the very fabric of the world around us. But before clarity could settle, my whole body went cold. Fist struck, and chaos erupted as muffled sounds of confrontation filled the diner. And then, just as quickly as it began, I heard a shout weave through the turmoil. Nobody move! A uniformed figure burst through the door, a police officer, gun drawn, eyes scanning the room in a flurry of chaos. My heart leaped, hope igniting. Salvation was here. But then I noticed the amused smirk playing on the scarred man's lips, a chilling juxtaposition against the dire threat. Mia! I yelled, but she seemed rooted, her body taut like a drawn bowstring, confronted by danger yet fiercely determined. And in that shocking moment of revelation, as my world spun on the knife edge of chaos, something else stirred within me, a realization that this was far from over. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, and in the depths of that chaos, I understood we were ensnared in a web much larger than ourselves. Ahead unfolded a path strewn with peril, and as the officer stepped closer, poised to engage, the shadows clung tightly, promising nothing but uncertainty in the struggle for our lives. The diner was alive with chaos, the clanging of metal and shouts intertwining with the scent of coffee and grease, a jarring juxtaposition between mundanity and grave peril. I could see Mia, her body tense and ready, all the defiance of a small warrior standing firm against the encroaching darkness. The officer's shout hung heavy in the air, but its impact was muted by the frenzy that gripped our surroundings. I could feel fear coiling tightly in my gut as my heart raced, pounding like a hammer against the shackles of dread. The scarred man, still smirking, took a step towards Mia, the threat in his gaze unmistakable. Put the gun down, officer, he taunted, his eyes narrowing with contempt. You don't know what you're getting into. Shut it, the officer barked back, but I could see the wavering resolve beneath his bravado. He stood his ground, face set in fierce determination as he assessed the situation, but appearances were deceiving. The men were not simply thugs. They were predators, and I felt the weight of their focus crawling over my skin like icy fingers. In that moment, I was torn between two impossible decisions. Should I back away with Mia, potentially dragging her into danger? Or do I reach for her, to pull her back under the protection of the officer's authority? Each second felt like an hour, fear tightening around us like a noose. Get down, the officer yelled, bringing his weapon up higher, aiming directly at the group. But fear had inspired chaos within the diner. People were diving beneath tables, panic and confusion making survivors out of patrons who once sipped coffee and chatted idly. While I grasped desperately at heroic thoughts, Mia's continued defiance became her armor. With a sudden leap, she was past the officer, her small figure racing towards the girl, the same child who'd unwittingly offered an exit. Maya! I shouted, desperation fueling my lungs. My instincts kicked in as I sprinted after Mia, spreading out my arms as if to shield both girls. But the world had transformed into a cacophony of shouts and screams, my voice drowned beneath the rising tide of disarray. The scarred man moved faster than I anticipated, his bulk surging towards the trio with predatory grace, each rapid step taking him closer to the girls, like a freight train building speed on a collision course. Mia. My voice cracked with urgency. Fear razor-edged as dread threatened to sweep me away. The moment stretched, suspended in earnest. Suddenly, another presence surged forward, another diner patron. A young man who'd been sitting quietly not far from us. Without hesitation, he stepped in front of Mia and Maya, hands raised as though he could stave off danger with sheer courage. "Let them go," he demanded, voice steady, even as tremors danced beneath the surface. The scarred man halted, surprised by his unexpected opponent, a flicker of uncertainty briefly shadowing his brutal smirk. "You think you can stop me? You're just a kid." "Maybe," the young man replied, defiance lighting his deep-set eyes. "But I'm not going to let you hurt anyone. It wasn't much, this courageous outburst, but in the raging storm of terror, it delivered a sliver of hope. A reminder we were not alone in our struggle so long as people chose to stand together." I instinctively moved closer to Mia, searching her face for courage, determination emboldened by those around us. The officer yelled again, panic and courage twisting his voice. "Everyone stay down," I said, "everyone get back." But there was no back now, no way to shrink away from this moment. The weight of the situation slammed down on everyone, an emotional dam threatening to burst. I felt my pulse throb in my temples, drowning out logic. And then the inevitable erupted. The scarred man lunged forward, instinct driving him to silence any resistance. But the moment was fleeting, twisting with fate as the officer pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, a painfully loud crack that resonated through the diner like thunder, instantly bringing silence to the chaos. The scarred man stumbled, eyes wide as he reeled, confusion morphing into a savage rage. Time slowed as he turned, muscles winding to retaliate. Suddenly, my breath hitched in my throat. There was no certainty, no justice in any of this. "Run," I shouted to Mia, feeling like a voice lost in a whirlwind. But as she nestled tightly to Maya, her eyes never wavering from the threat before us, my heart sank further into my chest. They had become wrapped in this tempest, jewels in a crown of conflict that held us captive. And then, in that split second where fear and bravery intertwined, the stark reality unraveled further. A shadow fell over my shoulder as a thick figure loomed behind me. Just as I turned, another voice echoed, a voice I knew all too well, dripping with feigned concern and cold malice. "Well, what do we have here?" Every ounce of dread coiled within me as I spun to face the newcomer, recognition clawing at my throat. The truth crashed down, heavy and suffocating. The one who had been pulling the strings, hidden in the shadows, revealed at last. Faced with the unmistakable gaze of a Patan, unquenchable betrayal, I realized this was not merely survival anymore. It was a battle that transcended escape. It was about unearthing the very roots of fear that they had sown. Finding my voice was impossible, locked away as treachery reflected in the eyes of the familiar stranger. Everything I knew shattering around me, revealing a deeper conflict that stretched far beyond this momentous dark and consuming legacy that threatened to weave itself into the fabric of our lives forever. The moment froze, my heart hammering against the cage of my ribs, each thud a reminder of the very real peril we faced. The familiar figure was not just someone I recognized. He was a ghost from my past, a haunting echo of deceptions long buried. His smirk was laced with a twisted familiarity, as if he reveled in my shock, in the chaos that unfolded around us. "Think you could escape me forever?" He sneered, his eyes glinting as they searched my face, as though reveling in the turmoil he had triggered. "This is what happens when you play with fire, my friend. Get away from us," I shouted, the rawness of my voice barely containing the panic clinging to my throat. My gaze flicked back to the other patrons, the officer, Mia, and Maya, all caught in the web of fear tightening around us. The realization seeped into my bones. He was the puppeteer in our tragic play, pulling string after string, each tug unleashing devastation. In that instant, the officer reclaimed his focus, his aim shifting from the scarred man to the new threat that now stood defiantly before me. "Step away from them," he shouted, though his voice trembled, revealing the fragility of his authority against the dark tide gathering in our midst. But my past was an unyielding specter, a weight that threatened to consume me whole. I could feel the threads of betrayal tightening, wrapping around my heart like barbed wire. The officer had no idea how deeply entrenched this man was in my life, how his presence could bring everything crashing down yet again. "Such loyalty you seem to have," the stranger said, the mockery in his tone ringing cruel. "But in this diner, they're nothing more than pawns in a game where the stakes are far greater than lives." In that moment, uncertainty gripped me. Was Mia truly safe standing firm at Maya's side? Or had I already placed her in the line of fire? Then I heard the sounds of muffled cries, the clattering of silverware, and the whisper of a mother pleading with her child from beneath a table. Fear wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud, but even in the thickening gloom, a warmth flickered in the back of my thoughts. Somewhere beyond the chaos, amid the painful reality of our circumstance, a little girl Maya had pulled at the threads of hope, her innocent bravery igniting something deep within Mia. "Let her go, please." Mia's voice rang clear and unwavering, her small stature seemingly untouched by fear. I marveled at the strength built into her fragile frame, the unyielding will that shone brightly against the shadows we faced. Fueled by her courage, I took a step forward, one step too far, perhaps, but I couldn't turn back now. "You don't have to do this," I called to the stranger, hoping to grasp any semblance of the brother I once knew. "Let them go. This isn't about them. Oh, but it is," he replied, slipping into that performance he could manipulate with a deft hand. "It's about loyalty, betrayal. You were nothing but a dream, an ideal that turned to rot. And now, you're merely collateral in the fallout." The weight of his words crashed against me, splintering my resolve. "No," I shouted, defiance roaring through me as I sought to silence the doubt creeping in. "You don't own us anymore. This doesn't end like this." In that moment of collective uncertainty, the air shifted, crackling with tension. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the diner on the stranger before me, witnesses to this fragile standoff. As heavy silence enveloped us, I searched for anything that could turn the tide. And then, as if the universe sought to open a door where none existed, the officer took a step forward, securing his determination to protect. "Step back," he ordered, positioning himself like a bulwark, eyes narrowed and finally steadying the gun in his grip. "You have two choices: walk out of here or end this now." For a moment, everything held its breath. But the lingering impossibility of escape flickered like a faint candle. This was a dance on a razor's edge. In that fleeting breath of silence, I saw a glimmer of movement from the corner of my eye. The young man Hood, bravely protected Mia, stirred again, inexplicably drawn to the unfolding chaos. With an unexpected surge of bravery, he moved to fend off impending confrontation. "Mia," I shouted, and almost in synchrony, the girl we had all gathered around turned, her resolve blazing like wildfire as she grasped Maya's tiny hand, determination pooling in her gaze. Then, abrupt pandemonium erupted. A crashing noise resounded as tables toppled, sending patrons sprawling into disarray, a tidal wave of shock sweeping through the diner. The scarred man lunged, the officer fired again, and suddenly, the world spun chaotically, unraveling before our very eyes. In the midst of it all, trapped and helpless, I locked eyes with the familiar face of betrayal, and just as the realization of what was about to follow hit me, the ground betrayed us all as the diner filled with agonizing echoes of chaos that pierced clean through hope, unraveling our tightly held beliefs of safety and sanctuary. And in that chaos, though surrounded by fear and threats beyond the blurry figures, across the shards of uncertainty, a single illuminating truth buried itself within. We were all woven into this dark tapestry of fate, and only together could we confront the shadows that threatened to consume us whole. The din of chaos reverberated through the diner, a cacophony of shattered plates and gasping breaths that twisted the atmosphere into a suffocating nightmare. I stood frozen, trying to absorb everything while the pulse of adrenaline thundered in my ears. Tables lay overturned, chairs scattered like broken dreams, and patrons desperately scrambled for safety as panic unraveled before us. MIA's grip on Maya's hand tightened, their fear evident, yet a flicker of determination burned in her wide eyes. It ignited something buried deep within Maya's spark of hope flickering amid the storm of despair. "Stay close," I shouted, suddenly aware of the urgency in my voice as I fought to shield them from the lurking danger. The scarred man's laughter echoed as he darted into the maelstrom, his figure a grim shadow weaving through the chaos. "You think you can protect them?" he taunted, his voice cutting through the madness. "They're just collateral, the sacrifices in your pathetic little quest for redemption." Every word sliced through me with brutal precision. I felt the burden of my past collapse over me, crushing my spirit beneath its weight. Guilt clawed at my insides, reminding me of every moment I had chosen to turn my back on those I loved. But just as I felt the darkness encroaching, a flash of motion caught my eye. The young man Charlie, I recalled, who had previously stepped in to protect Mia, surged forward, positioning himself between her and the unruly chaos that threatened to swallow us whole. "I won't let him hurt you," he shouted fiercely, determination radiating off him like a beacon of light in the midst of my despair. It struck me. His bravery mirrored that of Mia, reflecting the strength we often underestimated in the smallest of us. Maybe there was a time for hope, even now, amidst this spiral of fear and betrayal. "Charlie, no," I cried, my heart racing as I recognized the threat stalking closer. The scarred man's eyes ablaze with madness as he picked up a chair, brandishing it as if it were a weapon loaded with vengeance. The officer backed towards us, his grip unsteady, seemingly wrestling with the weight of the moment, and I feared it would all end in bloodshed. Then Maya, so small yet filled with an incomprehensible strength, stepped forward a mere few inches, her tiny voice cutting through the air like a delicate blade. "Stop. You don't have to hurt anyone." Her innocence resonated like a soft lullaby amid the storm. The din hushed slightly as all eyes turned toward her in bewilderment, the air thick with stunned disbelief. The scarred man faltered for a brief moment, his sneer replaced with an expression of confusion, as if my young sister's words carried more power than his tirade of destruction. "Please," she continued, her voice unwavering despite the terror around us, "we are just here to eat. We can go away, and you won't have to be angry anymore." Time slowed, and for a heartbeat, hope blossomed. Could it be possible? Could my sister grandstand the heart of a man consumed by rage? A flicker of doubt crept in amid the warmth. Was it wise to dangle our existence on such fragile words? But realization swept over me, a rising tide breaking against the shores of despair. Maya, untainted by the adult struggles and memories that haunted me, had cut through the chaos with sheer will. I took a step closer, defiance aligning with her courage. "She's right," I said. "We can leave. There's no need for any of this." The scarred man seemed to wrestle with thoughts swirling in his mind, weighing the now against the clouded history that had come to define him. I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, a fleeting glimpse of something buried beneath all the hurt. Still, the officer stepped forward, eyeing the stranger warily. "This is your last chance. Step away now or I will force your hand." The determination in his tone was evident, yet it echoed the uncertainty that lay palpable in the AI as the tension thickened. Uncertainty swirled around our fragile standoff like a serpent ready to strike. "What's it going to be?" the officer asked, his brows knit in concentration, as he anticipated the slightest movement. But chaos erupted again as another patron, emboldened by Maya's plea and driven by urgency, attempted to bolt for the door. The sudden movement startled the scarred man into action. In one swift motion, he raised the chair and swung wildly in their direction. "No!" my heart screamed, the ill-fated trajectory of the moment spiraling before me. Chaos descended anew, the world morphing into a storm of shouts, cries, and broken glass efforts to shield others blending into a desperate fight for survival. And just as everything faded into darkness, time slowed, the dim light flickering dangerously, casting long shadows across the shattered pieces of our sanctuary. A solitary realization pierced through the veil of fear. The echoes of betrayal ran deeper than I had ever imagined. The officer fell, striking the ground with a thud. The pain etched on his face mirrored the haunting truth that rippled through my mind. I never imagined that what lay beneath the surface of fear was something far more sinister than I had ever anticipated. The sharp edge of despair cut deeper with every breath I took, my heart racing as I absorbed the stark reality around us. The officer, with his determination shattered, lay crumpled on the floor like a fallen soldier in this war of innocence against brutality. I felt the air thicken with the weight of what had just happened. The sanctuary of our diner had morphed into a battlefield, the lines between protector and aggressor blurred in a suffocating haze of uncertainty. MIA's fingers dug into my arm as she clung to me, her face pale as she processed the chaotic scene. I could see the shift in her demeanor. She had gone from fierce protector to terrified child in a fraction of a heartbeat. "What do we do?" she whispered. Her voice trembling. I turned to Charlie, who stood rooted to the spot, still trying to shield Maya from the madness encircling us. My mind raced for strategies, for ways to negotiate with the monster before us. But every thought dissolved into a black pit of helplessness. "We need to get out," I finally managed, the words stumbling from my lips in a desperate rush. "We can't stay here any longer. Follow me." As I began to inch backward toward the flickering exit sign, Charlie remained steadfast, his eyes locked on the scarred man, who now seemed both powerful and broken. I couldn't fathom the darkness that lay within. I could only see the hostility straining against the crumbling facade of humanity. It was as if an unrelenting storm brewed behind those eyes, fueled by an old pain I couldn't decipher. But just then, against the backdrop of chaos, an unexpected kindness emerged. A middle-aged woman, a waitress who had always had a smile on her face despite the diner's weariness, stepped towards the scarred man without a hint of fear. "Please," she said, her voice calm and steady, "hurt people only hurt others. You don't have to live this way." Her words hung in the air, resonating with the kind of sincerity that disarmed your soul. I could see the moment it pierced through his armor, the way he faltered as if her entry into his world had muddied the script he had been dancing to. "Shut up," he roared, but there was a tremor in his voice, a quiver of uncertainty that hadn't been present before. Maya, still sheltered behind Charlie, watched with wide, innocent eyes, and I felt a flicker of hope reignite within me. "Maya," I breathed softly, "can you try talking to him again?" Before I could grasp whether it was courage or sheer instinct, she stepped forward, her small stature dwarfed by the looming figure of the scarred man. "I don't want anyone to be sad or hurt," she said, voice piercing the heavy air with clarity. I watched, breath caught in my throat, as she extended her hand with trembling palms toward him. "Please," she continued, "we can all be friends." That it was both heartbreaking and beautiful, the naivete of her offer hanging precariously in the turmoil surrounding us. And in that moment, the world swayed on the axis of her innocence, all eyes seemingly drawn to her fragile gesture of hope. The scarred man hesitated, his brow furrowed, caught between what he had shown himself to be and something he longed to escape. In that fleeting heartbeat, I thought we might have reached him, drawn out from the shadows by the light of her sincerity. But then his defenses crashed back, rage consuming him once more. "No one wants to be my friend," he bellowed, the thunder of his voice echoing against the walls like a desperate cry. "You're just as pathetic as the others." My heart sank as he hurled the chair down, sending a wave of fear sweeping through the diner once more. Clattering echoes punctuated the silence as it collided with the floor, and I instinctively rushed forward, recognizing the urgency of the moment. "Stay back," I called to Maya and Mia, but the chaos was swirling rapidly, an inescapable whirlwind of emotions and actions. Within a mere span of seconds, it became painfully clear that the path before us was fraught with the possibility of violence, an escalation of madness that threatened to consume everything we held dear. But even as the tide of darkness crashed over my thoughts, I noticed something in the scarred man's eyes flickered, a fleeting glimpse of hesitation. The weight of my past loomed heavy on my shoulders, summoning memories of choices made in moments of fear. "You don't have to be alone," I cried out, channeling my desperation into a plea. "We're all scared, but we don't have to let it destroy us. You can find help too." For a heartbeat, I saw the flickering light of vulnerability dance behind his stormy expression. Almost imperceptibly, something uncoiled within him, as if my words were stones cast into a still pond, sending ripples across the chaos. But then, the flavor of betrayal bubbled to the surface, the kind that etched its scars deep, carried through the years, born not just from personal history but from deeper societal wounds. Suddenly, a fierce voice interrupted the tense Iona knew, commanding presence that set the diner vibrating with authority. "Step away from the weapon. Now!" A figure burst through the doors, an authority clad in blue, but the danger swelled like a tide, driven by impulse without a plan. Without an assurance that peace would reign in this fractured sanctuary once more, an emotional cliffhanger enveloped us all. As I instinctively shielded Maya and Mia, knowing that the battle was far from over. The air buzzed with anticipation, and fear trickled down like sweat gathering behind my knees. Could we make it out of this disaster alive? Or was I destined to fail them once again, ensnared in a web of broken promises and haunting shadows? My heart raced with each passing second, treading the thin line between hope and despair. In the chaos of that diner, with fear swirling around us like a tempest, I felt a piece of my heart shatter, breaking into a million unrecognizable shards. I had spent so long navigating through shadows, desperately searching for the light, but now it felt like every flicker of hope was snuffed out, leaving darkness to reign supreme. As the looming threat of tragedy painted the air thick with anguish, Mia clung to my side, and I could sense her trembling, our souls bound by an invisible thread that tightened with each heartbeat. "Please," Maya whispered again, her tiny hand still extended towards the man who seemed so lost in his own pain. "You don't have to fight." With those words hung delicately in the air, everything seemed to still momentarily. I saw in the man's eyes a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, or a memory lost to time. But before I could grasp the significance, the door flung wide again, bringing with it a dozing officer, poised and ready to extinguish the fire raging amongst us. "Get down," he shouted, his weapon raised, sending a jolt of terror through my veins, blending perfectly with the chaos already arousing my despair. I screamed, instinctively pushing through the crowd, rocketing toward Maya and Mia, desperate to shield them from the uncertainty unfolding before us. The boundaries blurred me past, colliding painfully with our present, a chaotic storm that threatened to consume everyone. But then, in the flurry of gunmetal and raised voices, something changed. The scarred man finally lowered his gaze to Maya, his hard exterior softening slightly, and a flicker of regret seemed to sneak past the facade he had long held up. "Get out," he spat at the officer, but I could see the walls closing in around him. Mia whispered, shaking her sister gently, trying to get her to retreat, but the little girl just stood there, her small hand still extended toward the man. "You don't have to do this," she said again, voice steady, defiance decorating her innocence. The thin air thickened with standoffs, hearts pounding all around us, until at last, I saw the scarred man waver, his breath hitching as if caught between two worlds, the world where violence reigned and the fragile world where forgiveness flickered, just out of reach. "You don't understand," he murmured, the trembling of his lips belaying a battle unfolding within him. "Help him," Maya pleaded, unfolding her small hand further, the kindness radiating from her tiny frame causing an unparalleled ripple of tension in the room. If only a heart could shatter barriers, I thought, cringing at the thought of everything we had faced, how seasons of betrayal had hardwired a devil into existence. "Maya." "No," I breathed, mortified at the thought of her innocence colliding with the gravity of the situation. Yet before I could act, the officer shifted, uncertainty draping the air like a cloak. The scarred man's breath became ragged, the chaos around us swirled into echoes of silence, as if we were all suspended in time. "Step away," he began, his voice a rough whisper, strained under the weight of his decisions. "Maya," I breathed, the plea caught in my throat. "Step back," she shook her head vehemently. "No. We can help you. You don't have to fight. You can choose." And like a dam releasing its grip on all those pent-up memories, a violent storm erupted within him. "Choose?" he spat, looking up, anger bubbling forth. "Don't you see? I'm trapped. There's no choice left." In that instant, everything crumbled. I realized he mirrored the shackles I thought I had escaped, the grip of malice clinging to memories I once fought so hard against. I stepped forward, my voice stitched together with a blend of desperation and hope. You can choose to be better. You can choose to let the hurt go. It doesn't have to end this way for any of us. And there, amid encroaching shadows, something cracked in the heavens above us. The stillness stung. Everyone waited in a suspended heartbeat, where hope blurred the edges of fear. The man's eyes darted back and forth, wrestling with uncertainty, haunted by choices that echoed in his past. But ambition and rage surged through him. You think anyone can change? His voice broke, trembling on the precipice of terrifying enormity. You think I have a choice anymore? The crack in his voice sliced through me. Maybe not. But right now you have a chance, I said, my heart thrumming against my own fears. You have a chance to help the people behind you, to choose something far better than a life draped in shadows. The officer shouted again, emotions raw. Get back. That shifted everything, the sword hanging above us teetering on indecision. And just as I prepared to step back, ready to shield Maya and Mia, the scarred man turned the gun against himself, a flash of shimmering steel gleaming as he raised it. Eyes glazed with haunting pain, I yelled, my own voice ripping through fear as reality blurred into chaos. I surged forward, closer, ready to reach out to him, but his determination to shatter brought chaos that ensnared us. Time slowed, threatening to evaporate into agony as my heart raced. But then, it happened, a whispered echo of forgiveness strumming amidst the crowd, where Mia, sensing the rise in desperation, reached toward the shattered man once more. You don't have to hurt yourself. We're here. You can let the hurt go. You can feel safe. Just that simple phrase, a bomb sewn from the fibers of love punctured through the thorns woven into the fabric of his soul. Safe, he echoed, almost incredulous, the word blooming in the air like a flower against barren skin. And while the gun trembled in his hand, for the first time, he blinked, the shadows shifting to reveal what he truly feared: vulnerability. What if I fail? He whispered, so quiet it barely reached my ears. Maya stepped closer, her small stature reflecting an expansive courage that transcended her youth. You won't. You just have to tee or why did I end that instant? The world melted away, and I saw a fragile light of redemption in the man's eyes, caught between despair and the trembling hope emanating from Maya's untarnished heart. They stood as mirrors of truth, moments coalescing into something so profound it shattered everything, pouring forth the energy to light our dark corners. And he crumbled, collapsing to his knees, the gun clattering from his grip, echoing through the hollow silence of the diner as if time itself held its breath. In that charged moment, I reached for Maya and Mia, pulling them close as relief washed over me, saturating the air with unutterable hope wrapped in compassion. And as the sirens that had faded into the distance drew closer, the shadows that had once threatened to engulf us began to dissipate. I whispered the promise that echoed through our hearts: where darkness lay, light had the power to break through. That was the moment I understood that facing fear didn't always mean defeating it. Sometimes it merely meant finding the strength to sit beside it, to let vulnerability lead the way to healing, shattering the chains of past hurt. As the police flooded the scene, securing our fragile sanctuary, I felt the weight of everything I had lost slowly lift, replaced by profound acceptance that through the storm, every heart yearned for connection, for understanding, and even the lost souls wandering shadows could find their way back toward the light. It ended not with a bang, but with Maya's soft voice saying, "See, we are family." And with those words, perhaps that's where every journey truly begins, wrapped in the embrace of our ties, all searching for the light.